The CES letter states that out of the 34 women Joseph was sealed to, 7 of them were teenagers as young as 14. This is misleading. Only one was 14.
So it's misleading, but true, is what you're saying there, Kweku.
That was my first ever video, and to be honest, it feels like a lifetime ago that I was sat in my tiny little Oxford apartment, stacking laptops on top of boxes and precariously balancing a camera to try and record a reaction to This Is The Show, which is what you've just watched. Brad Whitbeck and Kweku's attempt to rebut the CS letter in, let's be honest, quite a juvenile way.
Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. That's the song he sings.
I've certainly changed a lot since then, and I want to keep changing. So today's video is going to be a little bit different. We're going to head outside, at least for some of it, because I want to. It is December though, so I'm going to have to layer up. So though it seems like a lifetime ago, it's actually only been 5 years since I released that first video on the 6th of December 2020. And now here I am, speaking to an audience of 40,000 of you. And each and every one of you is invited to join me as we take a whistle-stop tour of the past 5 years and how I went from this to this. And how exactly the current prophet of the church, Dallin H, let me down in the process. So let's get to it. February 2020 was when what many would describe as a faith crisis hit my home. Realizations around the church's scriptural view on a literal 6,000-year-old earth, combined with discoveries of the church's financial secrecy and lack of historical transparency, led to what I would now more accurately define as a trust crisis. The scientific issues took me away from a literalist scriptural belief, but if you were to go into a sacrament meeting on any given Sunday and people were forced to answer honestly, I would suspect there is a strong contingent of active faithful church members who do not hold literalist scriptural views on things like evolution or the age of the earth. What was far more significant, though maybe I didn't realise it at the time, was I had lost my trust in the church as an institution. I could maintain a religious faith, but the church in which I wished to continue to express that faith was no longer an organisation I felt I could trust to be honest with me. And so I began to explore in what ways exactly they may have been continuing to be dishonest with the membership of the church, as well as ways in which they had been historically.
We're as transparent as we know how to be in telling the truth.
Later that year, in December, church apologist institution FAIR created a series of videos which, to be blunt, were rather juvenile in their presentation of rebuttals to a document known as the CES letter. The CES letter is many people's first encounter to a compendium of troubling and problematic questions related to church truth claims. There have been rebuttals of the CES letter and rebuttals of the rebuttals, but what we were dealing with here was something almost entirely different. These videos from FAIR were eventually removed from their channel, I would hope out of embarrassment or a realisation of their inefficacy, and so now they survive only on my YouTube channel. Sure, Scott Gordon, the head of FAIR, tried to get them taken down, but the powers that be at YouTube explained fair use to him and told him that they were here to stay. And as a side note, I do find it amusing that a man in charge of an organisation called FAIR doesn't understand fair use law, but then I am just easily amused. Now, quite why those early videos of mine were well received, I'm not sure. The production quality was terrible, but I'd caught the bug and was soon looking at things like the church's Now You Know videos and other apologetic videos like those from Saints Unscripted. And while I continued to fact-check church apologists, I also continued to attend church. I had moved into the Oxford ward and rather nervously, as someone now publicly criticising the church, I continued to engage with my religious community. Now, a quick explanatory point. Inside the Mormon Church there is a system known as common consent, and it's a system that's used to sort of ratify the selection of church leaders. It's not that the members of the church pick who the leaders are. It's more that once the leaders are picked, they're presented to the members, and the members have the opportunity to either indicate their support, say, I sustain them, or to indicate their opposition because they have reason to believe that this person shouldn't be in that position. And if you know that the person who's being presented for a sustaining vote is acting in a way that sort of precludes them from that calling, then you should say something, you should vote opposed. And so that's what I did. In fact, I did it a number of times.
I opposed.
And because that opposing vote is an indication that you know something, you're invited to meet with your state president and discuss those things, which I also did. Back and forth we went, hours upon hours of meetings, emails to confirm what we discussed in those meetings, meeting with not only my state president, but my bishop, and at one point, Alan Phillips, who at the time was an Area 70, but is now a General Authority 70 on the Europe Area Presidency. And now all of these meetings and hours of back and forth led to this conclusion. My state president didn't invalidate the logic of my assertion that the senior church leaders were lying, but he said we couldn't ask those who could answer. We couldn't resolve the factual nature of the concerns I had about their honesty, because in order to speak to their intention that they were lying, we would have to speak to them. My bishop also expressed to me around this time that it would be great if we could ask the senior brethren directly, but we can't, and that gave me an idea.
It was at this point I decided to try something completely different. I found the emails of the First Presidency and Quorum of the 12 online. And how exactly did I find the emails of the church's top leadership online, you may ask? Well, I think they just need to be a little bit more careful about what public websites they sign up for using their official church email addresses. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And I approached them all with the same question at the core of my email. What is to be done by members of the church if they have cause to oppose the sustaining of senior church leadership, and the factual basis of their opposition cannot be resolved by local leadership? And would you know it, I got a reply.
Admittedly, it was just him saying he would love to answer, but he was too busy, so go look at section 30.3 of the handbook. But he had engaged, and as anyone who has spent any time in conversation with me will know, once you engage, you better be ready for a long chat. Because I wasn't going to be fobbed off, no way. I sent back an email quoting him to himself when he said, "The essential unity on doctrine among different leaders is preserved by the long-standing rule that questions addressed to individual apostles or other authorities about doctrine or policy that is not clearly defined in the scriptures or handbooks are to be referred to the First Presidency." He said that in the ensign, and so I then explained that that would mean, given that neither scripture nor the handbook clearly define the answers to those questions, I must insist you uphold your self-professed long-standing rule and refer these questions to the First Presidency, of which you are a member, so that we may continue to have the essential unity on doctrine. And that is when we really got somewhere. Brooke P. Hales, Secretary to the First Presidency, sent an email that I'm sure he and Dallin H now deeply regret. Because he said that, essentially, if these questions can't be solved locally, then the evidence should be sent to the Office of the First Presidency for investigation. Feel free to go back, pause, read the entire email for yourself, but I kid you not when I say that one email from Brooke Hales shattered the glass ceiling that I had been banging my head against for so long. It was time to send my concerns directly to the Office of the First Presidency for investigation. And my bishop, my stake president, and Alan Phillips all agreed. In a meeting with the three of them, it was agreed that my document outlining evidence of dishonesty amongst senior church leaders would be sent to the Office of the First Presidency for investigation. And so off they went, all 3,500 words of evidence against 7 of the 15 apostles at the time. And who should receive the assignment to investigate but our friend Dallin H, who himself was implicated in multiple instances of dishonesty. He would be investigating matters of his own honesty. Now I had to chase him a bit, but after a couple of months he got back to me. At last we're going to have at least one of the men accused of dishonesty speak to the matter. He'll be able to say if he was being dishonest or not. Thank you for your message of August the 2nd, an appropriate follow-up since you have not heard an answer from me. On July the 6th, I sent President Smith a lengthy letter suggesting how he talked to you about this subject, and giving reference to a public study that concluded I had not lied in my response at the University of Virginia. I am sure you will be hearing from him, and that is the help I promised to give you. Yeah, that's not the help you promised to give me though, is it, Dallin? Because not only did he only focus on one of the several instances of dishonesty that I laid out, and not only did he only focus on trying to exonerate himself, essentially throwing the other apostles under the bus, not only that, but he couldn't speak to matters of his own honesty. When confronted with the question of whether he was lying or not, he referred to a public study rather than just saying, I wasn't lying. I still wonder to this day why he felt incapable of speaking to matters of his own honesty. Now he sent that study along in a lengthy letter to my stake president, a letter that my stake president destroyed immediately after reading before I had a chance to read it, or we even had a chance to discuss it. He destroyed it before he shared any of its counsel with me, which meant the ensuing conversation regarding advice and counsel from the man who at the time was the second in seniority in the entire church. That conversation was based on my stake president's self-professed limited recollection of the letter that he had read. He tells me he read it a couple of times, then threw it away.
And breathe. Okay, so all that got really dense and in the weeds, and I tried to make it as simple and easy to follow as possible. But essentially, I spent years of my life trying to get my concerns heard through the church's system of common consent. I got so far as talking to the man who is now the prophet of the Mormon Church. He promised to investigate, he then came back with a weak source answer, and then when I tried to follow up, he just ghosted me. Now that would be a funny title for this video. How I got ghosted by the Mormon prophet. And needless to say, I was frustrated. And I continued to vote opposed. And I continued to be public about the reasons why I was voting opposed.
My YouTube channel was still growing, and so too was my reach. And in the summer of 2024, things really took off. I was flown out to Texas to speak to an issue where the church was claiming steeple height was part of their religious observance. I spoke to the town council as a member of the church, informing them that the church's argument was nonsense, and pointed them to quotes from church leaders, as well as contemporary examples of smaller temples and temples with no steeple at all. Around this time I was also contacted by Lad Bible. I took part in their Honesty Box series where I answered questions about the church honestly. Both of these things got some people pretty mad.
I'm here and I'm fired up. I'm driving to Oxford right now, gonna put the smack down on Nemo the Virgin, because y'all can't do it. Y'all are pulling your punches and trying to be nice to Nemo the Virgin here, and it's making me kind of sick.
And then BBC Radio wanted to talk to me about my work.
Now, next, you're going to meet a Mormon.
It's no surprise that with my profile increasing, I received a letter inviting me to a church disciplinary meeting very soon after these things aired. Hopefully you'll receive a letter in the post today which will explain the context and give a focus for the meeting. I wanted to meet to hear any questions you might have and to answer what I can. I can be available this evening, Saturday morning or Sunday evening. Let me know if any of those could work for you. I'm assuming it's not an early Christmas card? I'm afraid not. As we've established, it wasn't a Christmas card. By this point, most of you may have seen this picture of me walking out of my disciplinary hearing. And to be honest, with the length this video is getting to, I'm going to pop the excommunication live stream at the end of this video if you want an idea of what that night was like. But I will say I was supported by friends and loved ones, and that I prepared 8,000 words of defence against evidence that was withheld from me until the meeting. But you better believe I forced the state presidency to read every single word of that defence along with me.
To be honest, at the moment I'm just too tired to go through the excommunication night blow by blow. And this video is really meant to be a refresher on the whole Oaks debacle, but rest assured this won't be the last you hear about the excommunication night and what went down. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that. Right, so we're almost all caught up, though isn't it crazy to think that there's any more to say? By the end of 2024, I had been excommunicated, my appeal had been rejected, and I was officially out and on the other side. So what more is there that could possibly happen? What else could possibly go wrong?
It turns out, quite a lot. Even recent subscribers to the channel will know this has been a very tough year for me. Health challenges, so on. But this isn't a pity party. And I hear you asking, Nemo, what is the takeaway from all this? Well, strangely, I had a long conversation with someone in a dream a few nights ago, because yes, I'm chatty even when I'm asleep. And at one point they said to me, don't waste your time trying to wish into existence something that isn't. And I thought, that seems like sound advice. Was that what I was doing with the church? I don't think so. I suspected for a long time that the leaders of the church were not truly accountable through common consent, that the vote was performative and more of a loyalty test than anything truly meaningful. I don't think I was trying to wish a version of the church in which they were accountable into existence. Rather, I went out and proved that they weren't accountable by sincerely and thoroughly engaging with the common consent process, arguably taking it further than most, and proving that the leaders of the church are not willing to be accountable to that system. And even when they promise to hold themselves accountable, in my experience, they will shirk the responsibility and they will let you down. But I'm still glad I tried. And this applies to all walks of life and all kinds of relationships, not just those between members of the church and their leaders. You should be proud that you showed up, that you tried, and if it didn't work, then it didn't work. But hopefully the act of trying made some small difference, and at the very least, hopefully it changes you for the better. Because these past 5 years of trying have certainly changed me. And though the aim of my efforts have naturally shifted somewhat now that I'm on the outside, I'll keep showing up, I'll keep trying, and hopefully you'll come along for the ride.
Oh, and if you like this new style of video, let me know in the comments, because I like trying new things and I like knowing what you think of them.
If you did like it, feel free to sign up for the Shell Company 2 tier on my Patreon, because I'll be putting up a video of outtakes and other rambles from the shoot if that interests you.